2, 1. Supposed to be out of counter.
We're here.
Yeah.
Mr. Kenyon Murray. Man of, actually, I was thinking about this. So we have podcaster, we have father, we have husband, we have coach, we have trainer, we have analyst, and we have salesman. Am I missing any titles?
No, I think you might. Yeah, I have a number of titles, so I don't think you missed anything there though.
Have you ever seen Rocky?
Yes.
It's like Apollo Creed's intro, and he has all the different theme songs. I was like,
Yeah.
how am I going to introduce you? I want to say coach first, and then I wanted to say this, so you're a man of many titles, and it's something that, as I'm getting older, not to act like an old head,
Yeah.
but as I'm getting older, I'm seeing the value in being able to do multiple things instead of just one thing. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I think doing multiple things is great as long as you have things prioritized. Sometimes we can do a ton of things, but get scattered and not be very good at them. That's how I used to be. Like I would have my hand in like so many different things, and I was okay at most of them, but I wasn't great in any of them. And so that's been kind of the focus now as we're moving into this new chapter of our lives as parents and professionals is, okay, like what do I scale down now and what needs most of my attention moving forward?
Yeah, there's and it's just a basketball question too. Is it better to be a specialist and like a master at one thing so you're always needed? I remember like one of my coaches said, if you know how to shoot really well, every team needs a shooter. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the best shooter on the court, they're going to find a place for you. There's going to be a point in the game where they may need you. Or is it better to be good at multiple different things? And I feel like that's always back and forth because there's examples of both.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same thing with life then.
Yeah. I think if you're talking just basketball and take it to the NBA level, like how many stars are there on a team? Usually 2, sometimes 3 superstars. And everybody else has to fit a role. So you have to be able to specialize in your role. And at that level, you have to be elite at something, whether you're getting reps on the floor because of your defense, because of your shooting, because of your IQ and what you bring the team together. I think it's great to know some things, but I think when it comes to performance, you really need to specialize and be good at this, because that's just the way, especially the NBA is built on 2 to 3 superstars, and the rest are role players that fit in with them.
So now out of all of the titles that I just mentioned, and then there's even more, which one would you say you're the most proud of?
I would say my title I say I'm proud of it because of the process I've been going through and the journey I'm on, but I'm most proud of being a son. And I mean, a son to God first. Like that's the first and foremost thing. So that's the title that's the most important. I would say son, husband, and father. I think if the first 2 are in alignment, then I can do the third one really well. And then everything else after that, it is what it is, and I'll figure it out.
Faith has been something that's, I don't want to say new to me. I've always believed in God, but I didn't really know how to channel it. I never really knew how to do it. 2020, I was going through some personal stuff, and my brother, or the family that took me in, I called his dad. Whenever I needed something, I'm like, he's the guy who told me the difference between responding and reacting. He's like, do you pray? And I was like, do I pray? I was like, no. I was like, how do you pray?
Yeah.
And he's like, I was asking him, how do you pray? He said, Max, everyone has a different relationship with God, and everyone does things differently and how it works for them. Some people, it is church every Sunday. There's no one way of doing anything. And he's like, so it's whatever's comfortable for you. You don't have to be at church to pray. You can pray when you're at home. You can pray when you're driving. You can pray when you're in the shower. He's like, just talk to him. He's like, let him know how you feel. Pray big. And I'm telling you, for me personally, it has changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Like that faith has changed everything for me. For you, was it a moment? Was it something that you were raised having faith, or was it something that you had to learn for yourself as well?
Yeah, I think my faith journey, it started when I was a kid. My grandmother was a deacon, my grandfather was a deacon, so I was always going to church with them on Sundays. So Sunday school, church. Probably didn't get out, got to church at like 9 a.m. and you didn't get out till like 2. So it was a long day. So the faith was there, but I think for me personally, my faith wavered. Growing up, once we moved from South Carolina to Michigan, I was a kid going into 3rd grade. Like church wasn't something that we did all the time. We didn't pray. we were a family too that very seldom said "I love you" in the household, right? And so I remember, just that thing of saying, "I love you" on the phone, leaving, like that didn't really happen until I moved away to college. And then my faith was shaken even more when my best friend Chris Street died in a car accident my freshman year. You got someone that was so good, so pure, gave all of himself to other people, and then here he is taken from us. So there was a lot of anger there. And then you talk about almost being scared into faith is when Michelle and I almost got divorced and trying to figure out like what I needed to do to change myself. Like that was one of the darkest times in my life, but it was also the best time because God showed me kind of where my life was going, and what I had to do was first, I had to work on a relationship with Him, and that was first and foremost. And I felt like if I was able to do that, then everything else would fall in line, because true faith is we can't predict the future, and true faith, I believe, is ultimate surrender, like surrendering everything that you have, the questions you have, the doubts you have, the idea of even trying to think what tomorrow is going to bring, right? Like that's just not right. So being present in the moment, whether it's through prayer or song or conversation, going to church, like those are the things I feel are most important with someone when they talk about their faith, is being present and having those conversations, because the conversations you have and what you need in your life are different than me.
Right.
And so I think that was a great point of prayer is conversation. Prayer is song. There's different ways that you can show your gratitude and thank God for the grace that He's given you. So
You said be present, and it's something that I struggle with that I'm focusing on. So my first question is just how do you be present? But before I even ask that question, like just ask the question, is for those that don't know, I want to rewind a little bit. So you have boys that are both in the NBA, twin boys, Keegan and Chris. Obviously all the titles that we just talked about. So you're getting pulled in a million different directions while you're trying to maintain a healthy marriage. So you have a lot of different things that could be on your mind at one time. So I can only imagine, like for me, I have a lot on my mind and I don't have what you have. So how are you able to be present when you do have to wear so many hats, when you do have so many responsibilities, and you probably have a million things that you need to get done? How do you be present?
For me, I think I'm probably more busy now than when I had a corporate job. When I was a regional manager, I think I'm just more busy now than even managing, all these different personalities and job things. So one of the ways that I stay present with everything is I have days that I do things, right? So I have days that all I do is work on the podcast, whether it's my guest lineup or things like that. Like that's all I do. Or I have days where I'm working on my marketing, social media with my social media manager or my marketing manager. And then there's days too where it's just, Michelle, what do you want to do today? Like we like to take a day where we just do something together. Sometimes it's vegging on the couch. So how I stay present is making sure that I can segment my life and I don't let anything interrupt it. So our phones are the biggest thing, right? So, we were talking like, how are you present? It's like, if my daughter wants to have a conversation or my son wants to have a conversation, I put my phone down first and foremost and just let that, just do that. And because we are a sports family, I usually turn off the TV too, because there's usually some
something in the background.
So for me, it's putting everything away, the distractions, and just kind of locking in on who you're sitting with and that kind of thing. I think that's the ultimate place of being present. And we talked a little bit about it too. Being present is also listening to whoever you're sitting across the table from, and not just hearing them. We hear words, we hear sounds, but do we truly listen? Because if someone's going to take that time to sit down with you and share stuff, then you need to be intentional in that and let them know like what you say matters. If I can help, I'm going to help. So those are just some of the ways that I use now to be present.
I don't usually post a lot of like personal stuff on Instagram, but people know. So I'm in a very serious relationship, and I'm taking her serious, as you know, obviously. Yeah. I take her very seriously, and I'm practicing listening to understand versus listening to respond. And for you, I don't know if that resonates with you. I'm sure it does. What made you finally have that decision where it's like, okay, I need to change something about me?
So
I'm learning your story.
What happened that made me change? I got a text in December 2018. My wife said our marriage is over. That's what it was, because from that point, like we had, you know, not, I wouldn't say, there was tension, you know, and for a lot of different reasons. And I 100% at fault with why we got to that point. And so one thing she said to me was like, whether we stay married or not, like, I want you to be the best version of yourself. So for me, that started with my faith. Wow. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm working on my faith. If I'm strong in my faith, I become a stronger man. Yep. You know, I become a better son. I become a better husband. I become a better father. So it was that text message. And what I really had to do was try to understand, one, how I needed to communicate moving forward with Michelle. I knew she could forgive me, but she wouldn't forget. And I knew there's going to be times where stuff comes up. So for me, it was important to make sure I'm in those moments and I'm listening to her, because sometimes we think that if someone sits down and this is bothering me, like, we feel like we're the one that caused that.
Right.
But when you unpack layers and you go to counseling and you start identifying wounds that you may have internally, spiritually, whatever, you know, you learn that to be able to help someone through something, or at least be a sounding board for them, that's really all it is. So how hard is it for me to sit, listen, digest it, and then just be a better friend or partner, father, son? Like, you know, I think it's just so important that we make sure that when we talk to somebody, like, it's intentional, because so many people feel like what they say doesn't matter, and it should matter, especially if it's in the home. So you're sitting down with your girl, or your, you know, in the future, your kids, stuff like that. Like, it's so important to make sure that you're present for that, because they'll remember them saying something. Kids remember too, if you say something and then they're like, well, I told you that yesterday, and it's like, you told me you were listening, you know? So like, it's just, I think it's a lot easier to be intentional in that moment, as opposed to trying to cover your butt, you know? For sure. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Now, if I'm trying to remember this correctly, so you've been married, you're going on 25 years.
25 years in September.
Which is amazing by itself, so pre-congratulations. Thanks. You received that text how many years ago?
2018, December 2018.
Okay, so you've already raised children, you've already been through so many different things. So my question is, for people listening, I know hearing that you have a proper foundation is like a really big thing in relationships. You want to have a proper foundation, like I've always been told, even just fundamentals of basketball. You can't build up if you don't have a proper foundation. Like, you can't build a house if you don't have a foundation. But after you've already been together for a certain period of time, how are both of you able to change your foundation? Like, most people think you can't go back to change things because there's already so much damage that's been done. So is that a part of forgiveness? Is that, I know obviously faith was involved. It is possible to change a foundation even after years have gone by.
Yeah. I think a lot of foundations are built on good and bad habits. And part of it is, okay, the foundation that we have, there might be some things that are really strong. So if you, like Michelle and I, for example, we always have fun together. We always make each other laugh. Like, we're just, you know, that's always been there. Even in the times where they were dark and whatever, like, we still have moments where we're like, we know we're supposed to be together, but we have to change some things. And one of the things she said is like, so counseling was for me initially, and it was about, you know, my wife was like, hey, I've been working on myself for all this time. Like, you need a counselor. So when it came time for her to join the meetings, our counselor would ask certain questions, and because there were things that I couldn't explain to him about her. And once we got in there, the line of questioning he asked her, she realized, okay, I have some things to work on too. So what that did was it created this moment where we said, okay, Michelle has her journey, I have my journey. And I want to come back together. She was like, I'm done. I don't care. Like, you go to counseling, we're getting a divorce. But we knew we had to go through our own journey, and then hopefully that led us back to each other. And so that journey was where, you know, the foundation changed. Like, my family was always really important to me. But I also realized, like, as a husband and father, like, I'm looked at as a leader in certain things, head of household, financially, whatever you want to say. And so I had to reprioritize things. And honestly, my career was like the last thing that I was even thinking about. It was, I got, my faith, my wife, and then the family. But it was interesting because as that grew, there were opportunities that came to me to provide for my family. And it was also opportunities that I didn't think I was ready for. Where in the past, an opportunity was like, okay, I don't know if I have the skill set to be a regional manager for Henry Schein Dental, but the opportunity was there. And I'm like, it's here, so I might as well do it. Well, like whatever I don't know, I'll learn on the fly, but I knew I was a natural leader and everything kind of worked. But yeah, man, it was, being able to change your foundation takes a lot of focused effort. But it starts with looking at, okay, what do I do good in my life habitually? And then what do I don't do? Okay, now I've got to change this stuff. And changing the bad habits, it may adjust some of these ones that you've been doing well because where you're trying to go. I'm trying to rebuild myself as a man, so my faith, and that's important. If I do that, now I got to build on this marriage. Okay, how do I make the marriage better? So that one thing just kind of was a domino effect to everything else.
Before I talk about like raising the twins and obviously your family and the generational influence you guys are making now, I wanted to ask you, what would you say from every relationship's different, so I'm not saying this goes for all relationships, but what would you say now is probably the biggest thing you see from the younger generation, or it'd be my generation, I guess that is, that we struggle with? That if you could say one thing, if you could speak to a bunch of young couples in one room or on social media and it went out to hundreds of thousands of that couples, what would you say is the biggest thing that could change a relationship in today's society with phones and everything?
Your ability to communicate face to face. Because we live in a world where it's so much easier to send an email or a text. And so I think a lot of young people struggle when they graduate and now they got to go on an interview. Understanding that the way you communicate to someone is probably the biggest reasons you get a job or don't get a job, get a promotion, don't get a promotion, make a sale, don't make a sale. It's all communication. And the younger generation struggles with that. You walk into any restaurant and you look at the table and say it's, 2 parents and 3 kids. Who's talking to who? I was at a restaurant the other day and literally the mom was on her phone. The dad was sitting there, he was chilling, and then the kid had his game and had his headphones on. I'm like, that's just like, that is not a family outing to me.
And it carries over to relationships too.
Yes.
Everyone, like the social media has kind of painted this thing where, oh, well, why don't I have this? They have this. And it's like, why don't we do this? They do that. And it's like this weird, not to bash social media because it's provided so many opportunities, but I do feel like it has an influence on a lot of relationships. So.
Yeah, it does, because everybody sees that. And the funniest thing is I have a family that watches Love Island. So, you got Chris, Keegan, their girlfriends, McKenna, Michelle got pulled into it. I'm like, why are you guys watching this crap? I'm like, you guys are literally dumber now after watching that for 30 minutes. But it's what we do. But then you think about it, like these young girls are seeing, okay, so do I get the lip injections? Do I do this? Do I do that? So one of the things coaching girls in high school, I'm coaching 15 to 18-year-old girls. Like one of the things I talked about all the time is you can't live in a world of comparison. That's what that is. They're showing us all the good stuff, right? But you can't look at that and say like, okay, I want to be like that. Why? Like you are one of one. Like you are you. And so that's what I talked about with the girls is like, what you do on the floor, don't compare to anybody else. If you know that you put 100% of your effort, energy into your skill development, playing on the floor, like that's all that matters. Right. And if someone doesn't, and I always use Chris and Keegan, I go, and if someone doesn't recognize your talent, whatever, you keep doing what you're doing because you have goals. That's the same thing. Like with Chris and Keegan, like, hey, they didn't see your talent. They didn't see your potential.
Yeah.
If you stay thinking about that stuff, like, it's just going to wear you down over and over and over again. So I think that's the one piece of advice I always get. Learn interpersonal communication. That's the biggest thing. And that's where you see young people like yourself, you're able to connect with people that now want to mentor you because you've shown them that. You've shown them that you're not afraid to interact with an adult or interact with someone that knows more than you. I think, there's too much of like, well, I don't want. They might think what I say is stupid and that kind of stuff. So that's the biggest thing. And I think if young people learn how to communicate effectively, it's going to change their world and open so many doors for them.
Right, and open doors. Now, about your boys, off the court. This was something I asked you off the camera. And I'm like, okay, this is a topic that my boys brought up to me before. And he's like, it's something that you really need to pay attention about. If you have biracial children, it's important that you understand the significance of their identity and understand what that's like.
Yeah.
And he talked about the Patrick Mahomes documentary on Netflix. And there was a couple scenes in there where it kind of brought forth some of the obstacles that he went through. And I'm like, wow, like you're right. Especially as a man, as a future father and husband, it's your job to prepare your family for the things that could be trying to hurt it.
Yeah.
And so for you, what was that like raising interracial, biracial children and some of the obstacles that you faced, or if there's anyone listening to this who has biracial children, what would you recommend for them as a piece of advice?
Yeah, so raising biracial children in Iowa, that's a little bit different too.
It's a challenge.
It is and it isn't. And I would say that one of the things that I know is an unfair advantage is the fact that I played at the University of Iowa and that everybody knew me, and I was a fan favorite, there, and there's been a lot of times, even now, like there's people like that are in their 50s, like, I love watching you play, da da da. So the environment that the boys were raised in was a little bit different because there was, their dad played at Iowa, so that was a little bit different.
Right.
But one of the first interactions we had where we realized that would be something that we had to talk to the boys was when our boys were, I think they were like 2 years old, and I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina. All my family lives there. Everybody knows about the South. So we were in a restaurant, we're walking out, I'm walking out to pay. It's like an IHOP, we just went to breakfast. And so I'm walking out, and then the boys are behind me, usually single file line, and Michelle's behind them. And there was a table of women, black women, that said, "Oh, they're so cute." And then Michelle walked by, and it's like, and then she heard a voice that said, "Oh, but their mom is white," kind of with some attitude. So that was the first time, like, we were like, okay, like that's just weird. So, I think the conversations, living in Iowa, we were close to Michelle's family. So, they were very close and understood that part of their life. And so, honestly, in the last, I would say 6 years, they've really reconnected with our family in the South. And so they're learning more about, the African-American side. We just did 23andMe, and I know where I'm from. My ancestors are from Nigeria.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
They're from Nigeria, and we actually have the actual areas that they think we came from based on genetics. And so now, I think the boys understand that more. And, you talk about the Black Lives Matter thing. Like, we had an incident where my wife was pulled over. I think the boys were like 13 or 14.
Right.
And obviously this is before the Black Lives Matter, but it's just kind of in that same realm. Well, she was driving, we had a Suburban, she's driving a Suburban, you got Chris and Keegan and McKenna in the car, and she got pulled over, my fault.
Oh, your fault.
I didn't renew the tags. I was late on renewing the tags, so she got pulled over. Like, your tags aren't current. It's like, oh yeah, my husband does. So anyway, so I was the reason they got pulled over. But anyway, though, when they saw who was in the car, Chris and Keegan, like literally the police officer walked up, and as soon as he looked in the window and he saw Chris and Keegan, he put his hand on his gun.
Did he really?
Yeah, and it's like what the hell? Like, my wife noticed that. So, you have to have that conversation. We had to have the conversation of, doesn't matter that you're light skinned, like, you're considered black. And if you get pulled over, like, these are the things you need to do. So there's all kind of social things. I think it's more accepted now.
For sure.
In our society, interracial marriages and things like that. But I still think there's still the bias and the racism behind it, and you throw on the fact that as a family, we've been pretty successful. Those kind of things come along too, because success has led to, not only on my side, not only coming from the African-American side of it, but coming from the Caucasian side of it for Michelle, it's the same thing. Like, there's this angst and this hate about things. But I think our family's so tight and close, we really don't think about it. I've had jobs where I was the only African-American at the place of employment.
Right.
I'm at Indian Hills Community College coaching basketball. 90% of our athletes are black. But then you look on campus. I was at a staff like end of the year kind of gathering. I'm looking around. I'm like, bro, like I'm the only one here. I mean, and sometimes I'm just joking, but like not even the janitor, you know, was a minority. Like everybody at the school was white as white, and I'm like, I'm just a chip in a sea of milk right now. But it never bugged me. It never bugged me because I felt like I could always get along with people. Like I know I've lived in Iowa since 1992. I know farmers. I have farmers that are friends. I have people from everywhere, so I can go and move and talk to people because people see me as me. I don't want them to see the color of my skin, but that comes from how do you communicate with someone. If I'm going into a dentist's office, I'm not blasting hip hop music, pulling into his parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Now, once I get on the highway, I might bump that stuff. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so but it's also about knowing your environment and being able to move in that, but then still staying true to yourself. Like that's hard because you have some mixed race kids that want to be, they may lean more to their white side of the family or more to their black side of the family. Right. It's like embrace them both, you know, and figure it out. And I think that's when you bring people that don't understand it together. Is especially if they see the love that you have with your partner and the love you have with your kids. And so yeah, I know that was long and drawn out.
No, that's what I was. I was just curious for a selfish reason, so I can prepare. And then also just learning your story because it's something that I understand. His Aunt Sonia told me too, and she was like, "Hey, that's just something you have to be aware of, and it's to have." He has his family's my family. They're a beautiful family, and the way I was raised is you look at everyone for who they are. Like you said, everyone's a one of one. Right. So I don't think like that, but I know the world is a brutal place at times. It's a beautiful place. Yeah. But you have so many things where it's like, man, there's just brutal people out there who do think that way. So you have to have those conversations. Yeah. But you did say something that I was just about to say. I can tell because you almost have a force field around your family. Because you guys are so close, it is so tight knit that no matter what anybody says, whether it's a coach, it's a fan now, or it's someone who's just flat out jealous and doesn't like their life. Yeah, it doesn't really bother, or even family. Yeah, family's a big one. For me, family was a big one. You have to learn, even if they are blood, you have to understand what's good energy and what's bad energy. Yeah, and that's where I want to transition to. Yeah. So with Keegan and Chris, obviously they're having this unbelievable success. And we know being in the NBA what that means. That's just saying you're in the NBA, period. I looked it up. It was, I think, 0.004% go to the NBA. Yeah. So just the fact that you're in a 0.004% is ridiculous. Yeah. With that newfound success, or not newfound, but just being in the league, do you feel like having the upbringing that they did and understanding who they are, their identity, has helped prepare them for this life of now? There's going to be a bunch of people who don't like you. There's going to be a bunch of people who want a part of you. Yeah. And now they can decipher who's real and who's really not there for them. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is we're probably the most I wouldn't say most popular, but we're very, how do I put this? We know a lot of people. Right. But we don't have, I would say, a lot of like close friends. You know what I mean? Like if the boys want to hang out, they'll come to, you know, it's like they want to be around their family. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of their thing. I think the one thing that their upbringing has definitely done, it's allowed them to know who they are as people. It's really allowed them to know who they are as players. And I think because it's so strong and because our family's so tight, and even their girlfriends' parents have been together 20 plus years. Wow. All of our kids. Wow. Our kids are, girlfriends are engaged. All their families their parents have been together for 20 plus years. And so they have that, and they know that we always talk about family is, family's going to be there for you, good or bad. And even in family members, you have to cut some out. Like you talked about positive and negative energy, you have to cut some people out. And they may not like it, but the reality is, and I heard this quote and I can't tell you where it came from, but it's a great quote. And it's, don't let the family you came from affect the family that came from you. One more time. Don't let the family you came from affect the family that came from you. So
the family that raised me, I'm not going to allow them to affect the family that came from me.
Right.
So even though we're related and all that kind of stuff, like what you say to me is never going to probably make me change how I treat my wife, how I treat my kids, and do all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we let the family that we came from, especially negatively, really negatively affect the family that you have here, and it creates strain. If say my wife's brother, younger brother, who she's super close with, and he's like, Kenyon this, Kenyon that, you shouldn't be with him, da 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 da, where there's nothing that has been seen as saying that I'm off doing this or doing that. It's just his word. If she allows that to affect our relationship, that's what I mean when you don't let the family you came from affect the family that came from you.
I gotta make sure I write that down before this is over. I'm taking that one.
I can't even, and I can't, you gotta look it up because I don't know who.
I do that all the time, though. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I take quotes, I forget who said it. It's just a quote that resonates with me.
Yeah.
There's like a couple other things I just wanted to run past you, and I know you got a lot on your plate. Is what would you say is an individual? You're sitting on like a generational influence.
Yeah,
right. And
what I came up with.
I'm stealing it from you. And you have this crazy impact, and you're coming from a great place, and you have opportunities all across the board. What would you say is your main thing that you're looking to build and focus on to not only impact your family and your legacy, but impact others around you?
Yeah, I think the formation of the Murray Family Foundation is the most important thing moving forward because we talk about careers, and a very smart person told me that you want to have a 40-year career, and I was kind of like, what? 40-year career? Like, if you ask Chris and Keegan, hey, we want you to have a 40-year career, they're thinking, I'm only going to play in the league, if I'm lucky, maybe 10 years or whatever. But the foundation is what is going to allow us to not only connect with our community in Iowa, but it's going to allow us to connect to Portland and to Sacramento and hopefully here at DME here in Florida. But the reality is, like, how big can it get? Can we be impact globally, right? Those are the things that you have to think about when you think about changing, when you even start thinking about changing your community. Like, is this something that we can help other communities do? And so that's the most important thing because our legacy is what we leave behind and who we change in that, both positively and negatively. So the most important thing for us right now is really building our foundation in a way that we can branch out and help people, all over.
I asked the team question first for a reason, because I know you're a team first guy. There's no I in team.
Yeah.
How about you as an individual? Is it the foundation as well? That would still be if you had to have a selfish answer, would that still be your selfish answer as one thing that you're trying to focus on the most?
Well, it'd be a selfish answer, but I know that I'm going to be the leader of all this stuff that goes. My family looks to me as the head of everything, and so whatever we're doing is going to be important to me, but it's also important to know like where my time, energy, and effort needs to go at certain times. And there's going to be times where I'm doing more for the nonprofit, for the foundation. There's going to be times I'm doing more as a parent. There's going to be times where I'm doing more for myself. If you talk about my public speaking, life coaching, those kind of things. So as a leader and who everybody looks to, then
that's amazing.
Anything's important.
The last thing I'm going to say, and I just really wanted to make sure I did this, was just give you your flowers.
Yeah.
I just met you recently, and I appreciate you being so open and honest and vulnerable to not only just myself, but obviously everybody and the impact you make. And it's really inspirational, seriously, on so many different levels, not even just on the success level, but just who you are as a person and as a man. That's something that I'm trying to embody and become. So I just really wanted to say thank you. So I'm giving you your flowers.
I appreciate it, and man, like I told you earlier, like if you have knowledge and don't share it, what's the value? And so if there's anything that I say or do that can help impact people around me, especially the next generation, then I'm more than willing to take the time and whatever nugget I may have, I'll give it out. So
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.
Boom. Yes, sir. Thank you.